Okay, so page 170, chapter 18, the last chapter in our book. Chapter 17 ended with Ellie jumping into the dark, quickly, swiftly moving water after the boy Jeffrey. Okay, let's go. It was dark in the tunnel. I wasn't even sure which way to swim. My nose broke the surface and I gasped in a breath, choking as black water surged into my mouth. The top of my head scraped against the tunnel, and then the water pulled me down again, wrestling with me, rolling me over and over. I'd wrestled with Jacob and Al, with Maya, with my littermates long ago. That had been fun. This wasn't. I was being tumbled and dragged, not even sure where the water was going or how I could swim to shore. And Jeffrey's scent was here, too, washed this way and that by the current. I would catch a hint of it and then it would disappear, but I knew he was ahead of me, soundlessly, without sound, right? Can't hear him, fighting for his life. Suddenly, the water pulled me downhill. When my head surfaced again, so when you say my head surfaced, when your head breaks through the water to be able to breathe, I was able to paddle. The tunnel we'd pulled through had joined another larger one. The current was flowing through this tunnel even more quickly, but since it was bigger, there was more airspace above the water. Try to picture that. So I guess they were in a smaller tunnel. It says the tunnel we'd been pulled through had joined another larger tunnel. So they're in the sewer system underneath the roads that we drive our cars on, and a small tunnel which had very little space between the water and the top of the tunnel. So it was very little to try to get her nose or up to be able to breathe, or Jeffrey be able to breathe. Joined a bigger tunnel, and now there is more air space between the water and the top of the tunnel. Okay. I swam as hard as I could toward the smell of Jeffrey. I couldn't see him, but my nose told me he was close, perhaps only a yard or two away. Then the smell vanished. I knew he had gone under the water. When Jacob had been under the water, I dived down to reach him. It had been the right thing to do. He praised me. He called me a good dog. I had to do the same thing for Jeffrey. I took a breath and forced myself under the surface of the water, paddling hard. That time before, I'd been able to see Jacob beneath me. Now I could see nothing as Jeffrey and I were both swept along. But I knew he was there, tumbling just beneath me. So when you're tumbling, right, he's going, like, think about tumbling in gym class. He's tumbling, doing somersaults. I strained, my mouth open, blind, and then I reached him. I had the hood of Jeffrey's rain slicker in my mouth. I heaved with my back legs and dug with my front paws. Together, Jeffrey and I burst through the surface of the water. I heard him coughing and choking as I kept his hood between my teeth. I was gagging myself, trying to get rid of the water in my throat without opening my jaws. Whatever happened, I would not let Jeffrey go. So when you think of gagging, like you're choking, sometimes when we say somebody was gagged, they have like a rag around their mouth. So and you can't really breathe well and you can't swallow well. So what Ellie is saying, she was gagging, so she had the hood of his jacket like in her mouth, and so she couldn't open her mouth, yet she couldn't really breathe, swallow, or anything. I could not swim in any direction except the one the water was already going. All my paddling feet could do was keep both of us up so that we could breathe. At first, Jeffrey tried to help us as well by kicking his feet. But as we raced along the black tunnel, he slowly stopped. His body sagged down into the water, pulling down on the hood. I struggled to keep us both from sinking, but it was harder and harder. My jaw and neck were aching. My legs were slowing. How was I going to save Jeffrey? I'd found him, but that wasn't enough. The water was going to drag both of us under, unless I could get him somewhere safe. But where was safe? There was only the rushing water and the hard concrete of the tunnel's surface. Some weak light from far ahead flickered over the tunnel's walls and the water's surface. Light. That was good. Light might mean sunlight. It might mean Maya. It might mean people who could help us. The light grew stronger, and a sound grew louder along with it. It was a deep, humming roar, and the walls of the tunnel echoed it back at us until it filled my ears. I tightened my grip on Jeffrey's hood. Something was about to happen, but what? What do you think's going to happen? What do you think the humming, the loud noises? The light grew brighter and brighter all around us, and suddenly we burst out into daylight, tumbling down a cement chute. A chute. So it's a CH sound. It should be ch, but it's actually an SH sound. It's a chute. A chute, how can I explain that? Tumbling a cement chute and landing with a splash in a swiftly flowing river. Almost something you might see like at Splashdown or something. It's almost like a slide, but in water that has sides on it, and so you get shoved down it and then it lets you go. So the force of the splash forced us both under. But luckily, my back legs touched something from beneath me, a rock, perhaps, and I shoved us up. Jeffrey couldn't help me at all. He was limp, his head rolling from side to side as the waves pushed us. Water splashed over my head and into my nose. I forced my legs to move faster. We were out in the light now. There had to be somewhere safe that I could go. The banks of the river had been lined with cement so that the current pulled us between two slanting walls. So normally we talk about like the banks of the river, right, the dirt and so forth. But the banks of that we're looking at and trying to visualize here are made of cement. There's no grass or rocks that she's going to be able to get out on. It's cement, which when it's wet, and of course this water is moving quickly, is going to be very slippery. There's nothing for her to grip onto. Okay. I tugged Jeffrey toward one bank, but the current fought with me, trying to pull us both back into the center of the river. The ache in my jaw and neck was getting worse. What if I lost my grip? Then flashes of light caught my eye downstream. Men with raincoats and flashlights were running toward the bank of the river. But they were too slow, weren't they? And the river was too fast. Jeffrey and I would be pulled past them before they could get to us. I heaved against the greedy water. It was trying to suck us down, to claim Jeffrey, but he was mine. I had found him. I wasn't going to give him up. Slowly, I began to inch us both closer to the bank where the men were running. Two of the men plunged into the water. They were tied together with a rope, and the rope ran back to the other men waiting on the bank. The two in the water waded out hip deep, straining their hands to us. So when you're wading, you're kind of walking, but the water's kind of getting deeper and deeper usually. But we were not close enough. The water would sweep us past them. No, I wouldn't let it. I dug in with my claws as if the water were dirt and I could dig it out of my way. I paddled and heaved and put everything I had into aiming for the men's arms. Gotcha, one of them shouted as Jeffrey and I slammed into them. The people on the bank braced themselves as our weight pulled the rope taut. Taut is when you pull it really tight. It's almost going to snap. But no one fell. One of the men in the water grabbed my collar. The other man seized Jeffrey around his waist and hoisted him into the air. I let Jeffrey's hood go. I knew he was safe now. I'd found him, and I'd taken him to people. I'd done my job. The man kept holding my collar tight and throwing his weight against the pull of the quickly flowing water. The men on the bank pulled too, and together the four of us thrashed our way to the shore. I was last in the water. The man who held my collar was lifted out, but he never let go of me. Lying on the concrete, He pulled and heaved at me, and I scrabbled. That's when you kind of just try to claw your way up. Scrabbled at the steep bank with my tired, aching legs, and somehow I was out. I flopped down on the marvelous solid ground and spat water out of my mouth. Several of the men were huddled around Jeffrey. I saw one squeeze his skinny chest, and a gush of brown water came out of his mouth, so he had swallowed a lot of water. He was close to drowning, I think. And then he was coughing and crying. I heaved myself up with a cough and a sigh. It seemed my job was not quite over yet. People were supposed to be happy to be found. Jeffrey was not happy. I limped over to him without enough strength even to shake the water out of my drenched fur, my soaked hair. I lay down heavily next to Jeffrey, and he threw himself onto me, hugging my wet fur with all the strength he had left. I could feel him shaking. The fear was beginning to drain out of him, though, and my fear was going along with it, so they were both slowly feeling better. The fear was disappearing. Jeffrey was going to be okay. I had done my work again. I was a good dog. Jeffrey kept holding on to me as the men around us pulled off his slicker, that's another name for his raincoat, and his shirt and his soggy jeans, and wrapped blankets around him. Oh, you know what? You're going to be okay, boy. You'll be okay, one of them said. Is this your doggie? She saved your life. I'm going to stop right there because I'm afraid this video is too long, so